The Rant Network with Stuart Brisgel and David Solomon. Every Monday, when you think about it, we rant about it. Listen to us live on Facebook.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a Hump Day edition of the Rant Network. It is my great pleasure to welcome a friend of mine, Sass Peress, to our show to talk about renewables and energies. And we've talked about oil and gas, and there's the belief that Stuart and I are probably, benefiting a lot from the oil prices escalating, and that we're oil lovers. But the reality is we are not. We're just exploring the other options. And today, Sass, joining us today to talk really about the alternatives that are out there. But first of all, let me just welcome you in. But to give everybody a little bit of context, Sass is not some newbie in this industry. In fact, since the late 80s, Sass has been involved in renewable alternative energies, starting a company in solar technology, one of the first, to be part of the history of creating solar panels back in the late 80s, all the way till his company, iSun Energy was bought out by iSun in 2021. And now he is helping other startups to get much, much more involved in this sector. So, Sass, without further ado, why don't you talk a little bit more about yourself, your background, and let's get into why you believe we're doing this wrong around the world.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, David. Longtime friend that I was in Israel with many years ago and enjoyed a great trip. Back there this spring as well. My background started in automotive. My father was a manufacturer of car parts in Montreal, Canada. And I went from a bachelor's degree in finance to a master's degree in international marketing, and then straight into the family business, as so many people do. I didn't find my passion within it. It was lucrative, it made money, but it wasn't me. And in '88, I was looking for something new to do, and I went to the national hardware show in Chicago at McCormick Place, that Stuart certainly should know, and saw a solar-powered ventilator. And I looked at that and I said, solar power? I mean, I knew it from my Sanyo calculator that had a little solar panel on it. So I knew if I covered it, it stopped working. If I uncovered it, it started working again. But I didn't really think it was coming to prime time. And when I found out and I decided to jump in, I came home, I quit my job, my lucrative family business job, mortgaged my condo and bought my first container of solar powered ventilators. And then I said, okay, who am I going to sell this to? That's the way it started. So it wasn't out of a passion or being a greenie environmentalist. In fact, what I found out was that back then it was me, greenies, and scientists. Nobody had thought of, okay, how are we going to make this prime time? How are we going to make money at this? How are we going to make the world want this more? Creating demand, marketing is a background that I had. None of those things mattered. There was just like save the world and give me another 1% solar cell efficiency. And so I entered into this field head first, one would say, but really not quite understanding all the blockages towards the adoption of renewable energy, all of the things that people in the industry did and got in their own way, such as claiming we can save the planet. And that might surprise you, but I don't think we can save the planet. And that's coming from a renewable energy guy. But also the way that they were coming to market and talking to people. You can't shame people into changing their minds. You can't do that. It doesn't work. Politically, economically, socially, it never works. You just have to tell your story. In fact, when we were in Israel together, Rabbi Pupko said, you just tell your story at the wall in Jerusalem. He said, don't argue. Now, I know you guys may have a bent towards arguing. I hear the Rant Network does a little bit of that. But let's just go for it and welcome Stuart into the picture and get going.
All right, David, he didn't give much for me to go on.
Well, let me start with the first question. Okay. And before I let Stuart loose, of course, Sass, look, the whole world is turning upside down right now. Oil is escalating. It's over $107 a barrel. People are paying more at the pumps than ever before. And there's this cry out for what is, all we hear on the radio, all we hear in a lot of media is, hey, we need more oil, we need more oil, we need more oil. You have others who say, no, we need other renewable energies. But is the system, our governments, really committed to making it happen in such a way that we can transition from oil relatively quickly?
So the answer is depends on the government. Depends on what their interests are. Look, the oil lobby spends $250 million a year in Washington. That is a subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
That drives people to vote in certain ways because that helps fund their campaigns and secures their own personal interests. Right now, one would say, isn't the environmental lobby doing the same? It's starting to, it's growing, but it's nowhere near that. So we can look at it as a grassroots movement instead, where the natural thing is to say, how do I do better for the environment? I've never met anyone, by the way, on any side of the discussion who says, I want to do worse for the world. I want our planet to be destroyed. I want it to be dirty and unlivable for our children and their children. I've never met anybody say that. What I've done is I've said, okay, people talk about climate change. Guess what? I've been in this business 34 years and it doesn't mean anything to me. How's it going to mean something to Stuart? It can't. It's just not possible. It's not in the realm of possibility. You got to get down to being practical and trying to say, okay, if we start from a point of agreement, which is we want to do better, then let's think about something. The Model T was the most inefficient gasoline car that ever existed because of the first one, right? It wasn't efficient. The way that the oil was pumped back then wasn't as good as it is today. It is more efficient today to produce oil than it was back then. And the same thing then goes to electric vehicles that are in their first decade of being really produced. It started out terribly. And people point to what's happening in mines of lithium or cobalt or manganese, and I couldn't agree more. Those practices of how they treat child labor and all that, does it remind you of blood diamonds at all? Of course, it's coming from the same place. Is it a coincidence? It's not. So we, as an industry, and I say we because I've been in electric mobility for 10 years, we have to clean up our act. And so people are working on reducing the percentage of cobalt and manganese, okay, and rare earth minerals in batteries so that we don't have A, dependency on China, and B, dependency on places that don't exactly have great labor laws.
All right, I'm going to jump in. Again, Sass, thanks for coming on. You've been the butt of several jokes over the last several episodes, but I don't mean it in an insensitive way. Everyone that hasn't driven an electric car will more than likely be wowed and amazed. Anyone that hasn't seen the effects of having solar panels on your house and how they change powering back in the grid and getting a check like you did in Florida, you'll be wowed. But where there is a massive disconnect, that everyone likes to project the story that renewable energy actually saves the planet in any way. In fact, the argument is the cost benefit, as you put that screen back up, that picture of cost of gas. Yes, that cost of gas is only 97 cents to the $5. However, the damage to the environment is exponentially more than the fossil fuels in which we drill. Moreover, the only type of renewable energy that is the least impactful to the entire environment, as far as I know, is our good old Texan with windmills, right? And windmills have been around since year one, I think the 13th century. And the first electric car, Sass, comes out in 1898, actually.
Yeah.
So we've had electric cars for well over 130 years.
Right.
But the biggest problem, and yes, I'm going to put up this ugly picture. Another fact about all of these renewable energies, whether you're talking about batteries, solar panels, you end up with not just blood diamonds, you end up with what's literally called child labor. It's
Right.
very disgusting, very horrible.
I think we just mentioned that, though.
But I wanted to put the picture. I wanted it to be ingrained in your face.
Stuart, but hold on. There was a lot. Let's unravel. There was a lot that was said there. And Sass, please go right ahead.
So Stuart, here's the thing. You know, you talk about showing these dramatic pictures, and I understand them. And as I mentioned before, there are practices early on in any industry that will change. They will evolve and get better. And we're just at the beginning. Now, you talked about 1898, and I got a picture of Eaton, who's a partner of mine, Eaton Corporation, that had their battery charging systems back then. Unfortunately, oil took over as an easy to produce, unregulated source of power when they learned how to burn it. So what happened was, because the electric industry did not evolve as well, then oil took over. And so you show that picture of those kids. Why don't we show 6,000, and I mean this number. This number is not 6 million graves every year dug for people who die of cardiovascular disease due to pollution. Most of those people, Stuart, are not your neighbors in Florida.
Yeah, but you know, the same can be
Hey,
said.
whoa,
Hang on a second, but hang on. You talked about something, but the same could be said for all the equivalent to like asbestos type
Stuart,
diseases in lungs that come from mining cobalt.
Stu, hold on.
You're going to hang on, and I'll put my hand up when I'm done. That's the way we'll be fair to each other. So they're not people in Miami Beach
Who
by
said
the beach.
unfair?
Most of the people are in developing countries that have no pollution standards, no regulations for labor laws, as you talk.
So
right?
the rich get to get away with, I drive my fancy Tesla, but I kill 4,000 Africans or 4,000 people in the Congo.
Driving all those gasoline cars for over 100 years that have been at the expense of people who can't afford to regulate pollution.
Yeah, but you know, actually, you know what? Car pollution represents the least amount of pollution as far as carbon emissions go in the planet, with
You're
China,
wrong.
India,
You're wrong.
Pakistan lead the way because it's from industrial production, and that's where the carbon emissions actually genuinely come from. So yes, cars are a contributing factor, but the primary carbon emissions are from industrial plants.
You gotta give a chance to give an answer to people, Stuart. So we offloaded our manufacturing to China and India so that we can get cheap iPhones and cheap stuff. They have to produce it using energy. They could not evolve quickly enough, and they need to use the cheapest energy because we wanted a cheap iPhone. We are part of the problem as a consuming society. People want to get rid of oil, but they're playing with their iPhones and their covers that are made of petrochemicals. You know, they don't understand that everything is going to be gradual. And we can't talk to India and China about reducing their carbon without remembering that we have offloaded to them all the manufacturing of all the crap that we buy.
Well, the global economy.
China releases more tons of CO2 than anyone.
10 million tons.
They are actually the dominant manufacturer of solar panels today. Do I like the fact that the panels are coming over on sea, on boats that use diesel to power them? No, that's where hydrogen is going to come in. I have a statement, horses for courses, Stuart. Horses for courses. EVs are not going to solve everything. Battery electric will not solve all the problems. Solar will not solve all the problems, right? Natural gas is actually a great step technology. Why? Because it allows us to pull off of petroleum and get a step ahead and then get another step ahead. Look at the war,
But hang on a second. Slow down. Let's address. You just made a whole lot of statements. I got to jump in on you. Hang on.
Let's get Sass to answer. Let him finish the answer.
You're doing many topics and you're not letting me get in on.
Stuart,
I'll give you a chance. Don't worry.
Stuart, I promise. I'm almost done. It's also about money, Stuart, which you know so well. Putin made $15 billion in taxes since 2014 when he took over Crimea and the pipeline that goes through it. That's what he has taxed the oil companies. So with that, I'll put my hand up and allow you some.
Okay, Sass, listen. The facts are as followed. Out of the 25,000 approximately charging stations in the United States,
there are way more.
No, that's the estimated public chargings. That's statistics of 2021.
25,000. Fast charging level 3 or level 2?
It's just a generic stat on the amount of chargers. But the fact that I'm trying to pull out of that is almost, if not more than half, are located in one state called California.
Yes.
Okay. The next largest state next to that is New York City.
Yes.
Okay. So let's just stop for a second and let's
Hey.
say, for argument's sake, 70% of all charging stations are centered around California and New York State.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about the rest of the United States of America, which is the second largest producer of emissions at 5,000 tons per year.
Yes.
5,000 million tons. Sorry.
Yes.
Now, okay. So if you want to save the planet, you want to do it through EVs as one example, I believe that you need to do it in a very slow, methodical manner, because what you have now is 40 times the Eiffel Tower already of discarded lithium batteries, primarily for laptops, cell phones, and cars, that are not able to be properly recycled, which will never get rid of the heavy waste codes like heavy water, mercury, barium, chlorium that come from the manufacturing and disposing of cobalt based and lithium based batteries, right? So,
Yeah.
it's a very dirty, it's almost more dirty and detrimental to the planet than any other renewable source. So where I started off this saying by the best renewable source of energy is the one that David has on the picture now. Solar is not, wind is. Wind is plentiful. The manufacturing is using hardened metal steel. The cost of emissions to produce such tower has a 7-to-1 ratio cost benefit to any other renewable source. Now, hydroelectric would be the first, since we all grew up in Quebec, but hydro bears many other damaging features that we don't discuss. So wind is something you put up a tower, but there's also other things that come from damage. The migration of fish, the sharks, the
Stuart,
migration
Stuart,
of animals.
Stuart, we invited a
Let's
guest.
get to the
so
point.
We are
Hey,
not
your
pontificating.
electric car is killing the planet 3
Yeah.
times more
Okay.
than
Now,
the gas burning car.
Hold on. All right, let
If only Stuart had up to date information. I understand where he's coming from with the old information that he has, and unfortunately, being in the industry, I have daily information on where things are going. So it was 70-30 in terms of proportion. What the Biden administration is doing is helping balance that. In fact, some of the places that really need to be educated about EV and need the chargers are rural America. And that's where a lot of the focus of the industry is. Talking with the CEO of Jeep, VP at Rivian, and many others, including Tesla, I know that they're really focused on decentralizing where the chargers are, because they have recognized that while California, New York, and Europe and China have led the way, the rest of the United States and Canada have had to catch up. So in Quebec, 50% of electric vehicles in Canada are sold in Quebec. Now we're using hydro, so we're immediately using clean energy. But do you know how I felt driving through Kentucky, knowing that it was coal producing the electricity, charging my Tesla when I went to pick up my son in 2018? I didn't feel very good. I understood there was a balance. However, it doesn't matter, because when you consider the entire life cycle of production, oil is far dirtier than any other energy source in the world. And that's not debatable. So when we go from there and say, how do we do better? I'm glad Stuart has brought up all these issues, because they're recognized issues that are being worked on. There's a company in Israel called Stordot. They're changing the chemistry. They're removing manganese and cobalt from their batteries. But
Sass,
Stuart, let him answer.
How long will it take to get rid of these batteries?
Stuart, let him, please. Come on, let him answer. You went on for an hour. Let him answer.
I'll stand up, Stuart. Don't worry. I will give you a chance to look like the person you want to look like. So what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, we're at the nascent start of a new capacity to generate and store energy. Of course, there are going to be things that we don't like about it. Let's work on that together, Stuart. Let's find ways to replace lithium. Did you know that a lithium battery has 3 lives?
Yep.
A lithium battery has 3. The first life starts in your phone or in your car. The second life takes that battery and moves it to grid services where you can balance the grid. So if you're not getting enough power into the grid, you take it from the battery. You can generate it any which way but loose, but at least you're reusing that battery. And the third life for that battery, when it's no longer strong enough to service the grid, is they take it out. They recycle today 90%. There's a company in Quebec that's up to 95%. And then they use it in places that don't have grids, that are dependable, like Haiti, like Africa, like the Caribbean, or where energy is imported and then regenerated again. So it is work in progress, Stuart. There is no perfect solution. I'll tell you the cleanest watt that exists. It's the watt that we don't use. Over to you.
Actually, let me ask a question, because I think Stuart, you've talked way too much. So let me ask you a question, okay, Sass? And one of the things that is upsetting me is I hear Trudeau came out with his forecast and how we're going to do, what we're going to be like by 2030, 2050. I hear the same thing from the Biden administration. A lot of fluff, a lot of talk, and there's no action. In fact, Canada, since the Paris Accords, has gone up in emissions, not down during the Trudeau administration. So I'm tired of the BS. If you were sitting right now on a government council, what would be your advice at this point to governments so that we could wean off of this oil nipple, if you will, and go towards something a little bit more sustainable?
Government, get out of the way. Let them get out of the way. Let us have a discussion which involves market drivers in order to be able to better guide us towards a cleaner future. There is a cost to pollution, David, that's undeniable. But who pays it? We do. Why are we paying it? Why should the oil companies pay it? Why are we paying it? Why aren't we demanding that people take a life cycle approach? You know, people talk about the cost of an EV today. Yes, it's more expensive, but over the life of that EV, it is not. It is not. I have driven 240,000 kilometers in the past 7 years in this Tesla. I have not bought an ounce of oil. I've never had to change the oil in the car, never had to change a transmission, never had to deal with exhausts, none of that. So let us be honest about it too. What Stuart brings up are good points that nobody should deny, right? But you put up a picture earlier. Can you put that picture back up of the comparison between gas and electric costs? So I put that up. I put that up last Saturday on my LinkedIn. And Stuart talks about, you know, a couple of hundred people watching this, and I hope it grows every week. By the Sunday morning, I had 48,000 views. By the Monday morning, I had 150,000 views. And by today at noon, just before we started, there were close to 260,000 views of that one post. It means that the story is hot. People relate to it. Yes, it was a very cute slogan played on Michelle Obama's "When they go low, we go high," which was a divisive statement that I don't agree with. It was just used here to make a point. Let us unify around the goal, around the objective, and then let us analyze each of the components together fairly, and then come to a societal decision with government saying, how do we support it, not how do we baby it. Oil has been...
Sass, you're right. Yeah, but Sass, you've said nothing that I really disagree with. And I was hoping that you would have taken a different line where I would. And you're being a true gentleman. And I want you to understand, I am not opposed to EVs. I'm opposed to the nonsense that's being preached about how good they are for the environment, because EV cars today, as they are sold, are 100% worse for the environment than the car that burns next to it. And that's the problem.
I get it. You know, the problem is extremists in any discussion are the problem, because they never seek to unify or to bring people together towards a common cause. They seek to divide. And it's like you take politics. AOC and Marjorie Greene, they're the same. They depend on each other, because then they get to rant and argue, right? And that's what media is. That's what show business is. But if we get real and we work together, And instead of dissing where EVs are today, ask the question, how do we make them better? And then work towards that. I think that's the right goal.
And that's
I
and this
I
is
agree with you, Sass.
Stuart. This is the angle I wanted to take, Sass, because and I've spoken to a couple of local politicians, some Canadian senators, and I've asked them outright. I know we're an oil producing country. I get all that kind of stuff, but the reality in today's world is oil is killing us. Where is the government to help? I know at one point there were government grants offered to families to shift from one form of home energy to another form of home energy.
Yep. Yep.
It is not happening in the renewable sector. It's in a way that's making it attractive. It's not making it easy for people with escalating inflation. Look, I mean, I've been on electricity in my house for 25 years, and I thought it was nuts. I'm glad I'm not on gas and oil, but for how many people are still on gas and oil and can't get off of it because it's just so expensive? And Quebec, being such a beautiful producer of electricity, for example, should be a world leader in this area.
Yes.
Where, like, again, you say the government should get out of the way, but unfortunately, it sounds like we still need the government. I mean, instead of paying us $500 here in Quebec to vote for a government, put the $500 to putting it towards a renewable energy.
What I mean by get out of the way, right, is exactly the kind of information that's put out. Stuart is just missing information. He's an intelligent human being, but he's missing information. And if our government would educate people far more about the realities of carbon costs, of lives lost, of some of the realities of producing that oil, people have a conscience. They don't just have a budget and a wallet, they also have a conscience. And we could drive together. Every time I went to my kids' school with a solar charger in my hand in their primary years, oh my God, did I have people mesmerized. Kids weren't talking to each other. They just...
I wanted to bring this up for a second.
Hey, Stuart, come on. Stuart, let him finish, please. I want to hear the end of the story. Come on.
He had a pocket charger, went to a school.
Even people like Stuart, people on the argument will say, well, you do this, you do that, you don't do this right. Great. Let's talk about what we do right and what we can do more right. That's really what this should be about. If we as a society tell our governments, stop subsidizing oil. You're giving us you don't charge them when you clear up a military shipping lane. You don't charge them for that. You don't tell us that we're doing it for the oil companies. Libya, Iraq, those wars were not about oil. We could have a long discussion about how many men and women died to produce that energy measure from oil that didn't have to if we didn't use oil.
Well, have you read John Loftus's book? I mean, if you ever read John Loftus, who worked for the State Department, he absolutely has been saying that all Middle East wars since the 19th century have been predicated on oil. There's been no exceptions whatsoever. Look, we're nearly half an hour, and we really do appreciate all the time that you got. Stuart, I'm going to let you ask really the last question. I'd like to hear Sass's answer, please.
Well, I mean, Sass keeps going back to a false narrative that I believe that, the environment and being part of a solution. I'm being, the same oil subsidies that the government does and secrets that it holds for oil and gas exist in far excess when you're dealing with solar panels, Solyndras, the China. The corruption is all over. And there's massive corruption in any new technology, especially when the government is paying and lining the pockets of all these people and company. And the purists that you are the minority, right? You're a purist, you're the minority. Go look at all of the government money that went into, chew on that, 26% for solar systems. I don't know what you're trying to give me. You're putting that in the wrong.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm gonna put it. You just keep going. I'll take care of that. Finish your question, Stuart. Finish your question. Some of us have stuff to do, so let's go.
Listen, the oil and gas industry is very flawed. No question. I don't disagree. It's very flawed. Very flawed. And there's
Okay.
a lot of death and destruction and wars that come as a result. I agree. And that's been going on for well over 100 years, when they actually used to light our streets with kerosene, not with oil and gas, right?
Okay.
And just so you know, I understand the exploratory wildcatting and the actual drilling and the byproducts that come from oil and gas. However, when you are dealing with mining and depleting the same rare earth minerals across several countries that have no rules as far as, slave labor, getting to the food system, the same deaths and lung illnesses and other things come from all of the current lithium, magnesium, nickel batteries, right? And it's only going to be 100 times more the problem in 10 years. So again, I don't disagree that the concept is phenomenal, a cleaner energy. I agree, Sass. I just think the method in which the country is doing it now and the world is trying to give the optics of it is a false narrative. Because in 10 years, we're going to have a bigger problem on trying to how do we dispose, reuse, and deal with the destruction we did by mining all these rare earth minerals.
Right. Well, the good news is, Stuart, that all those rare earth minerals are being reduced every single day. And that is the absolute
Cars are
truth.
getting more fuel efficient. They're burning more fuel efficient. Everything is growing.
Last time, please.
Not because you want them to, not because people have wanted them to. This is part of the problem, is that, the automotive industry has fought against fuel efficiency, fought against seatbelts, fought against unleaded fuel.
The Tucker is a very old story.
Stu, please, I want to hear his answer, not you.
So the bottom line is, as I said, things are getting better. Your information is dated. I don't blame you. I look forward to helping you get more informed about up-to-date information as opposed to the information you've been quoting. And by the way, we're making progress by leaps and bounds on reducing, as I mentioned at the opening statement, those rare earth minerals that nobody wants in an EV battery. So in closing, perhaps I can say, Stuart, we've ended up on the same side. You want to do better for the planet. I want to do better for the planet. The issue is we look at our histories and we say oil's terrible. David said it. You said it. EVs are not as good as some people think, but they are better than what was. And that's the point. Thank you.
Stuart, on that, let me wrap this up. Sass, this has been amazing. Really do appreciate you
I had
coming
fun.
on and really helping to clear up, some of the misconceptions, the myths, and especially my
Right.
friend Stuart, who has the bug, who needs to, whatever. But I think that reality is, I think our message has been here that we're looking for the right solution, not political
Right.
solution. We believe in real science, not political science. And I think that what you brought to the table was very, very helpful for everybody to understand. And we can't wait to continue to spread the word. We hope you can come back on again with us, Sass, in the near future. We'd love to continue this conversation. Thanks again, my friend. Thanks a lot.
You both. Thank you.
Bye, Sass. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys.